I'm Margaret Ann Windsor. The name I have to use is Peggy Ann Dempsey. I'm married at Childers. I'm making this video because there was an FBI investigation when I was doing a medical malpractice book in Marietta, Georgia, back in '76 till April Fool Day of '80. There was an investigation launched by the FBI. I realize now that they always knew about my kidnapping. I found out that I was brought to Moulton, Alabama, which is not far from Huntsville, where the Space Center began in early 1957, I guess, or 55 perhaps. Anyway, I'm not going to get into hostage money and illegal treaties. I've put it up before on plenty of videos and Facebook. What I wanted to say here is the FBI supposedly launched the investigation and sent the letter dated June the 23rd, which is my father's birthday, by the way, but it's 79. And the U.S. Attorney, William Harper, issued it and said, ongoing investigation, national security involved. Well, he didn't say there was nothing found, but therein is my point. And then a few months later, I have antifreeze put in me and should have died. There's a long list of crimes committed against me and my children, my parents, and my country that have never been told, much less prosecuted. My point is, though, that the FBI turned it over to the U.S. Attorney. Nobody was going to prosecute this. I didn't know about my real name. I thought it was the book and Larry McDonald, Congressman Doctor, and the other names and agencies. And it was the book that caused them to do all this to me. It was in '83 when I was flown out to Larry Flint's during a campaign to replace Larry McDonald, Congressman Doctor, when the passenger plane he was on was shot down by a Russian MiG, August 31st of '83. Now back to, I was writing about mind control murders too in the book of programming, like Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, James Holmes, and Aurora, Colorado, etc. I was shocked. MSNBC, I got up in the night, I was so sick, and they actually were having a rundown on the deaths and their mind control. They didn't attribute it to mind control, but they put them up, like Jeffrey Dahmer. I put this before the press took it to them, begged them before I found out about my kidnapping, some of these murders. And there's patterns done in some of them that are deliberately done and can be proven because mind control is invisible. Now, if I haven't lost you, I didn't mean to get into that. My point in making the video, I've made enough of them and put them up there on YouTube, Facebook, is that when I worked for the district attorney in Huntsville, after I'd had the antifreeze in me, I do know that you have the detectives or the police investigate. They turn it over to the district attorney to prosecute or not prosecute. If he chooses not to prosecute it, it's pretty hard to do anything about it unless the state police come in or investigators are somehow brought in. So Mr. Comey, the FBI director, did the right thing because, getting back to my kidnapping, the Kennedys were in on it. Joe Kennedy was ambassador back then, appointed by Roosevelt, and my own uncle helped take down my father and kidnap me when I was born in '39, kidnapped in '41. So the Kennedys, Robert Kennedy's name is on the Justice Department building, I believe. I know it is. I think J. Edgar Hoover's is still on the FBI building. But any fool knows the people responsible for my kidnapping and taking down my father, and illegal treaties that allowed them to take over everything British, posing as our friend. They're not going to prosecute this. So the FBI, when they were always knew about my kidnapping, though. But supposedly they had the investigation and then turned it over to the U.S. Attorney, or William Harper's U.S. Attorney. Nobody was going to prosecute it. They didn't care, most of all. because of the repercussions of telling the truth, how horrible they really are. But to turn it over to the Justice Department, no way. So when Kennedy was president, he was going to put in his brother as Attorney General. Look at the mess it's in now. It's so controlled. Can you imagine? But most people don't care as long as they think it benefits them. So now then, back to Comey. He made public the part of the investigation in that he's put it out there for you, the public. Any fool knows they found no wrongdoing. Oh, I don't think he was saying that about himself, not really. He was talking about if he turned it over to the Justice Department and Loretta Lynch and Obama, and I've forgotten who was the had Lynch's position before then, the black, he was interracial too. But anyway, it's not going to get prosecuted. So he put it to the public. Any fool knows that if you've wiped a server clean, you let your attorneys delete, do as they please with emails. I mean, the woman has committed, and you're not going back in her past back to the murder of Vince Foster, the White House counsel, that suddenly they just took his body and dumped it in the Park Service there and said he committed suicide. Ron Brown was part of the staff, and he was shot in the head when his plane went down. And then you've got back to Hubble. There's a whole list. In fact, if you Google, it's called The Graveyard. Then you've got Clinton being the parent of a biracial child, a young man. There's a blackout on that. He's got YouTube and Instagram telling about it. So the point being here, I'm going to show a picture and then I've put all this up. The media's got a blackout on me, and they're not going to prosecute anything. It would take, I've said this for the last while, it would take God to come in and prosecute it. I hope he's still around and does it for me. He's the only one that can. Because the United States is not going to prosecute itself, all right? The Rockefellers, Rothschilds control your media. They can, after they kidnapped me and took out my dad, is when Israel became a Jewish state again. And the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Kennedys, my own family of Windsors there, at least some of them, George and Elizabeth has carried on the illegal acts. They control the war tribunal too. So they've gone along with all this. Nobody's going to prosecute it. This is my Aunt Georgia O'Keeffe. My dad was never married to Wallace Simpson. She married a double. This is my Uncle George in 1936, the year I was born. And he's planning 1939, the year I was born. He's planning my kidnapping with Roosevelt, Jew, who appointed Kennedy ambassador. They helped kidnap me, etc. This is my dad, Edward VIII. And this is Larry Flint, who was shot in Lawrenceville, Georgia. This is Hustler of April of 84. And that was a program shooting. I was writing about mind control murders. By the way, if you ever hear about that, mind control is the murders being used to take the rifles and the guns. You can program a person to kill with a truck that went through Paris streets, the driver program. You can have Ian Zorings, the diplomat's son. He's in Buckingham, Virginia State Prison. He and Elizabeth Haysom, she's in prison, was in Goochland. They didn't kill her parents with a butcher knife. That was a programmed takedown, and here's the kicker. And I really have suffered the consequences of telling the truth about some of this, too. Really. Hillary Clinton appointed, I'm going to draw a blank on him because I thought he was a good guy. Her VP candidate for Vice President, Tim Kaine. I lost any respect for him. Before he left being governor of Virginia, he was going to release Jens Orens back to the Germans and let him serve out the rest of his time. Let me say this, he's not guilty of any crime, and neither is Elizabeth Haysom. And her parents are dead, and everybody around here knows the truth, too. So you can imagine what's happened to me telling the stuff. But anyway, Tim Kaine is running for VP. I can't believe the things coming out of his mouth. So anyway, I'm going to stop here. I don't know that any of it's done any good. But you've got the global Illuminati in there now. They have been for a while. They control your press, Rockefeller Center, etc. Your news media are the ones that need handcuffed. And ask them why they have deliberately deleted the real news over so many years, who pays their salary, and what gives them the right to lie, cheat, and stand in judgment. It's your media that you really need to go after too.